Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and today's video is for people looking to immerse themselves in a sci-fi world that's not too long, but not too short. And that's why I have the Goldilocks of recommendations with some duologies. Hey, we make a good duo. Get back in your room. Get back in your room. Sorry about him. He's kind of annoying. He's always saying things like, but I'm the original. Anyway, let's get into some books. So I have 4 sci-fi duologies to recommend for you, and seeing as I'm a fan of all of them, I thought instead of giving them ratings, I could put these duologies into categories of all-time classic duos. And those are Mario and Luigi, Shaq and Kobe, Romeo and Juliet, and Chicken and Waffles. And at the end of the video, I'll let you know how a glitch in a new YouTube feature replaced my audio from one of my recent YouTube videos with audio dubbing in other languages, and I'll let you know how you can watch that in English. So, all is well with technology, definitely no reason to fear a robot uprising. Anyway, let's get into the duologies, starting with Ilium by Dan Simmons. So the Ilium duology is comprised of Ilium and Olympos, and it is a retelling of Homer's classic tales, the Iliad and the Odyssey, except it also includes robots, aliens, and time travel. And if that sounds ambitious to you, that's because it is. This is a wildly imaginative series, and it follows 3 different storylines which seem completely separate and slowly weave together throughout this duology. Now, this is written by Dan Simmons, who also wrote the Hyperion Cantos, and I definitely could have included some of those books on this list as it is made up of 2 duologies, but seeing as it's a 4-book series, I thought I would choose Ilium. It's a little bit more of a strict duology, but it has, I think, a lot of similar qualities to Hyperion. I think if you are a fan of Hyperion, you might also enjoy the world building. It's very in-depth, it's creative, it's descriptive, it's really immersive. It's definitely an interesting place to be. And you might also enjoy the mix of genres. Dan Simmons uses some harder sci-fi elements, for example, throwing a little bit of quantum physics in there for you, but also including some fantastical elements and historical fiction. So if you enjoyed the different styles of storytelling in the Hyperion tales, then you're going to get a little bit of that flavor in the Ilium duology as well. This is also a series for literature fans and English majors, because as well as Homer's works, there are also allusions to Shakespeare, as well as Proust, and many others that I pretend to be more familiar with than I actually am. I like this duology almost as much as I like the Hyperion Cantos. I think the only elements for me that meant it ended up just a little bit short of Hyperion were the character arcs and development. They weren't quite as satisfying for me as they were in the Hyperion Cantos, and there are a few creepy scenes of a sexual nature that, if I was the editor, might have trimmed. Might have cut out a couple pages from these books. So although I do have a couple of issues with this series, I think the high points are very high. You get some awesome action, some very interesting ideas, and some great moments. So in which category am I placing the Ilium duology? I'm going to have to say Mario and Luigi. And that's because while I am a fan of both, I think more credit deservedly goes to Mario. It is Super Mario Brothers, not Super Mario and Luigi Brothers, which is why the duology is called the Ilium duology and not the Ilium and Olympus duology. I think that both books are very good, but the main difference for me in terms of my enjoyment was the ending. I think Olympus does a great job of continuing some of the narrative threads set up in Ilium, but when it comes to one of them, one of the most important ones, you get to the end of the book and Dan Simmons goes, yeah, and that's pretty much that. That just, that's resolved, right? You happy with that? And that's kind of how you have to feel as the little brother being given Luigi when you picked up the Nintendo remote. Your bigger brother, he gets to be Mario, and in the end, you're just left with Luigi. Ilium is awesome. In the end, you're just kind of left with the ending of Olympus. It's fine. It's good. You're not sad about it. You're not mad about being Luigi. I'm not mad at Olympus. Just not quite Mario. That's why Olympus doesn't get to be red. That's why Ilium gets the red book cover, because Ilium is Mario. Alright, up next we have the Daemon duology by Daniel Suarez. So the Daemon duology is a story in a modern setting in which a famous video game developer passes away, and this seems to trigger a series of inexplicable murders. And this story combines the techno-thriller genre, as well as some cyberpunk elements, as well as a thriller detective story. So I would say this series is for fans of Blake Crouch or Michael Crichton because the pacing is impeccable. Every time I finished a chapter, I thought to myself, yep, loved it, have to read the next one. I was just completely immersed in this storyline, intrigued by what was going on, absolutely hooked. And I wouldn't say that means that this is just pure popcorn sci-fi, because there are some interesting themes, some rather cool tech and ideas that it explores, and I did like the distinctness of the characters' personalities, but I will say that it is definitely plot-focused. If you are a plot-driven reader, I think this is going to be a series that you'll be drawn to. I think these books were also a little bit ahead of their time in the way that they approach certain things to do with internet and technology, and how if something existed in the real world like it does in Daemon, how that might affect things like trade and technology, the economy, governments, and as this story kind of spirals out of control, the scope gets bigger and bigger, as do the implications, and I found that very interesting to think about. So what category am I putting the Daemon duology into? I'm going to go with Shaq and Kobe. These are two Hall of Fame players, and these are two 5-star books. And I'm going to say that Daemon is Shaq and Freedom is Kobe. And the reason for this is that I think Daemon was perhaps a little bit more focused in terms of following the plot beats of a detective thriller. It knew what it wanted to do and it executed it really well. Alright? Shaq, he might not have a mid-range game. He might not shoot a lot of threes. He's just going to get to the basket and dunk on you. And that's all he needs to do. If you're going to focus on one thing and do it really well, do it really well. And that's what Daemon does. I think it is an excellent thriller. I was flying through the pages, absolutely loved my experience reading Daemon. Whereas it comes to Freedom, I think it got a little bit bigger in scope. It was trying more things, okay? It had a layup package. It was shooting more from the mid-range. It was attempting more threes. And with that, your field goal percentage might be a little bit lower, but maybe it helps you reach some higher high points. Because this book tackled a lot of things. The way it tried to incorporate a lot of timely themes, post-financial crisis, into this world, I felt like was very ambitious and was interesting to read about. But that maybe came at the expense of being able to focus on some of the characters in the way that I wanted to. There was a lot going on, and we maybe couldn't spend as much time on everything that I wanted it to and execute all of those to a top tier level. But the things I think it did well, it did extremely well, and that still made it a 5-star read for me. So two different approaches, but great combo. And for our third duology, we have Teixcalaan by Arkady Martin. So the Teixcalaan duology is comprised of A Memory Called Empire and A Desolation Called Peace, which are two great titles to get us started with. And this is a space opera in which an ambassador travels from an independent station to the capital of an empire. So we have a bit of a fish out of water story as they get adapted to the different culture that they are now immersed in. And a little bit of a catch, the ambassador that they were replacing died under mysterious circumstances. So that makes for a great first day of work. Something I really enjoyed about the Teixcalaan duology was the cat and mouse games when it came to the power dynamics and the relationships. Every person that our main character interacts with, you're trying to decipher, are they a friend, are they an enemy, are they somewhere in between, depending on the situation, and I think that was a lot of fun for me as a reader. I think this series has some classic influences, such as the cultural explorations in Dune, as well as setting up a galactic empire in Foundation. But it also adds some modern takes on political maneuverings, as well as some rather interesting tech ideas. So which category am I putting Teixcalaan in? Well, I'm going to go with Romeo and Juliet. And that's because I think if Shakespeare were alive today to read some science fiction, he might enjoy Teixcalaan because of its focus on language. Firstly, there's a rather interesting naming convention in the book. All of the character names have a number and then a noun. For example, 3 seagrass or 6 lightning. I've thought about what I would like to be named. I would probably go 7 iron because 7 is my lucky number and I like golf. 7 iron. Got to be able to hit a 7 iron to be decent at golf, which 60% of the time I do every time. And I'm not sure what Shakespeare might like to be called. Maybe 5 acts. Could be a good name for Shakespeare. Let me know what Teixcalaan name you think William Shakespeare would have gone with. And to be honest, at first I did find this a little confusing when I was first getting into the book, but once I started to make sense of it and started to remember who was who, I did find it fun, and I did think it was a memorable aspect of the book. Secondly, poetry is a big part of Teixcalaan culture. There are actually poetry writing competitions, and it can affect your status within society. So I kind of enjoyed making the aspect of literature itself part of the world, a unique way to create a culture that felt different to our own. And lastly, without wanting to give away any spoilers for Teixcalaan or Romeo and Juliet, I guess, if you haven't read it, there is an element of both romance and tragedy in both of these books. And lastly, we have The Commonwealth Saga by Peter F. Hamilton. The Commonwealth Saga is comprised of Pandora's Star and Judas Unchained, which is an epic space opera set several hundred years in the future in a world which is connected by wormholes. Now, one day a star just disappears, and a mission is put together to set out and find out what happened there. Now, what's going on with that star? So these books put the epic in epic space opera. Each of them are about 1,000 pages long, at least the mass market editions that I have, and it took me around 300 pages to even get an inkling of where the story was going, how some of these things were going to link together, but once I did, I was pretty invested in the story, and Pandora's Star is famous for one chapter in particular. I won't spoil which one it is, but it stands out. It can almost be read as a short story, and that kind of elevated the first book from something that was kind of interesting to, whoa, something cool is going on here. Now, I've heard these books referred to as hard sci-fi, and there are some hard sci-fi elements in there, but I think there's more just descriptions. Hamilton loves to give you the details of everything. You're going to become a big fan of enzyme-bonded concrete by the time you finish with these books. And I think fantasy fans might actually be better suited to these books than sci-fi fans, because fantasy fans are used to reading these epic 1,000-page chunkers with tons of characters and places and names to keep track of. Whereas if you're coming, especially from classic sci-fi, where everything is only 200 pages long because we just cut out all character development, then it might be a little bit of adjustment. And the question is it worth it? My answer to that, yes, just. These books are very long, and I do think there are some pretty amazing high points, but I don't know if it needed to be 2,000 pages. If you are the kind of person that likes immersing yourself in a world and getting to know all of the nitty-gritty granular details, this is going to be a series for you. But if you want something that's a little bit faster paced, a little bit more plot-driven, I'd maybe refer you back to Daemon. Peter F. Hamilton might have gone to the same school of writing as Dan Simmons, because on the one hand, we do have some amazing ideas, but on the other, there are some unnecessary sex scenes. Again, if I was the editor, could have cut a couple pages from this one. So for our final category, I'm going to have to put the Commonwealth Saga in chicken and waffles. So here's the thing about chicken and waffles. They're great. I love them. It's an absolutely delicious dish. But if I eat chicken and waffles for lunch, I don't know if I want chicken and waffles for dinner. Alright, that might make me feel a little bloated, you know? And that's kind of how I feel about the Commonwealth Saga duology. Did it need to be this much? It maybe feels like we could have trimmed the fat here or there. And I'm glad that I read it, I enjoyed it, but I'm just not sure how excited I am to read another series by Hamilton right away, because it's a bit of a commitment, you know? We need maybe a little bit more of a variety that we get in Teixcalaan or the Ilium duology, you know, some healthy fats, a little bit of carbohydrate, some protein, you know. I don't know how sustainable it is for my TBR. I think my TBR would just blow up if I ate nothing but Hamilton books, 1,000-page chunkers. You know, we've got to keep a healthy balance, you know, a nice diet of books on the TBR. So there you go, those are 4 science fiction duologies. Let me know if you've read any of them or if you're interested in picking any of these up. Now, just before we wrap up the video, here's what happened with last week's video with what the people are referring to as GlitchGate 2024. So I uploaded a video, 10 sci-fi books I want to read in 2025, and the day I posted it, it worked normally. People were watching it, people were commenting, all was fine. I go to bed, wake up the next day, and all of a sudden I have all these comments like, why is this video in German? Why is this video in Indonesian? And I'm like, that's not good. So I go to check it and I get served the video in another language as well, and there's seemingly no option to change it to English. So I start doing some research, and it turns out a new YouTube feature, automatic dubbing, has been implemented, but it glitched on my video because it was giving people the wrong language, and most importantly, English wasn't an option. So I researched how to fix the settings, and it's obvious that YouTube wants to have this setting turned on because it was a little confusing. It was hidden how you turn it off. You need to go to YouTube Studio, Settings, Advanced Settings, Upload Defaults, Automatic Dubbing, and then turn that off. So the good news is I have turned that off and this shouldn't be an issue in the future. The bad news is that only affects future uploads, it didn't fix that current one. Editing Jonathan here with some good news. In between recording this video and editing it, my previous video with the audio glitch has been fixed. I tried it both on my laptop and my phone, and you can now listen to it in my original English/Australian accent. So go check it out. It should work for you. If for any reason you have any issues, just click on the settings wheel on the video, click audio track, and English should be an option again. Huzzah! Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash or just gently click the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, like Nima and New Eden, Half Ogre, Zakawe, and the Duality of Colin. And you can find more sci-fi content over here.